The sky was painted with soft shades of pink and orange as Emma stepped out of the luxury retreat's front gates. The sound of the door slamming behind her felt deafening. It was as though the entire world had shifted in an instant, taking her from a place of comfort and confidence to a moment of pure chaos. She paused, still processing what had just happened, and looked around in disbelief. Her boss's words echoed in her mind, like a haunting refrain. "You're not welcome here anymore." His voice had been cold, detached, as if the years of hard work and loyalty she had given him meant nothing. Emma had always believed in pushing herself to the limit, believing that if she worked harder than anyone else, she would be rewarded. But now, standing outside the grand gates of the retreat, she realized how naive that belief had been. Why? What did I do wrong? She asked herself, though she knew there would be no answer. She had spent months planning this retreat, working tirelessly to make sure everything ran smoothly, all to impress her boss and prove her worth. But now, here she was, standing alone on the outskirts of the property, trying to make sense of the sudden rejection. The retreat, perched high on a hill overlooking the serene valley, had always seemed like a dream come true. The white stone walls, lush gardens, and lavish interiors had promised a life of ease. Emma had always imagined that one day, she would rise through the ranks, become a part of this world. But now, that world felt distant, cold, and unwelcoming. She pulled her jacket tighter around her shoulders, her eyes stinging with a mixture of frustration and confusion. There was no doubt in her mind that something wasn't right. She had spent months getting to know the staff, the high-profile guests, and even the local community, all in hopes of creating connections that would lead her to the top. But instead of recognition, she had been shown the door. As she walked further away from the gates, her thoughts raced. How could this happen? She thought back to the events of the past week, trying to pinpoint where things had gone wrong. There had been the argument with her boss about the event schedule, but she had thought it was just a minor disagreement. Then there had been the strange behavior of some of the staff members, whispering behind her back and exchanging nervous glances whenever she entered the room. Had they known something she didn't? Had they been plotting against her all along? "Emma," a voice suddenly called out from behind her, breaking her train of thought. She turned quickly, her heart skipping a beat. A man stood at the entrance of the gates, his face pale and tense. It was the retreat's manager, Mr. Harrison. She recognized him immediately, though they had never spoken much beyond the usual pleasantries. "What's going on?" Emma asked, her voice tinged with frustration. "Why did he do this? What did I do wrong?" Mr. Harrison took a few steps forward, his hands trembling slightly. He seemed unusually unsettled, as if he was carrying a heavy burden he couldn't quite manage. He glanced around nervously before locking eyes with Emma. "You don't know, do you?" he asked, his voice low, almost hesitant. She stared at him, confused. "What do you mean? What are you talking about?" The man hesitated, glancing back at the retreat. "You should come inside," he said, his voice barely above a whisper. "We need to talk." Against her better judgment, Emma followed him back to the retreat, her heart racing with a mixture of curiosity and dread. She had no idea what he was about to say, but she had a feeling it would change everything. Inside, the air was cooler, the marble floors cold beneath her feet. The opulent decor, which had once filled her with awe, now seemed distant, almost foreign. Emma followed Mr. Harrison down the long hallway, her footsteps echoing in the silence. The staff members who passed them seemed to avoid eye contact, their faces filled with uncertainty. It was as if she had entered a parallel universe, one where she no longer belonged. They reached a small office at the end of the hallway, where Mr. Harrison motioned for her to sit. She did so reluctantly, her mind still spinning from the events that had just unfolded. "Emma," Mr. Harrison began, his voice soft but urgent, "there's something you need to know. Something important." She leaned forward, her gaze fixed on him. "What is it? What's going on here?" He took a deep breath, his hands trembling as he clasped them together on the desk. "I don't know how to say this," he began. "But the truth is, you've been kept in the dark for far too long." Emma's heart skipped a beat. What could he possibly mean by that? "You're not just anyone, Emma," he continued, his voice barely above a whisper. "You're the owner's daughter." Emma blinked, her mind struggling to process his words. She could feel the blood draining from her face. "The owner's daughter? I don't understand," she stammered. "What are you talking about?" "My father is, he's just a businessman. He never said anything about—" "I know," Mr. Harrison interrupted gently. "That's because he wanted to keep it hidden. He didn't want anyone to know." Emma's thoughts were racing. Everything she thought she knew about herself, the life she had built, the people she had trusted, suddenly seemed like a facade. She had no idea what to believe anymore. Her father had never mentioned anything about owning the retreat, let alone the fact that she was his daughter. It didn't make sense. "Why didn't he tell me?" she whispered, her voice breaking. "Because he knew it would change everything," Mr. Harrison said, his eyes filled with sympathy. "He didn't want to put you in this position. But now, things are different. You need to know the truth." Emma felt as though the floor had been ripped out from beneath her. Her entire life had been a lie. The rejection she had just faced, the sudden coldness from her boss, it all made sense now. She was part of a world she had never even known existed. But why hadn't her father told her? Why had he kept her in the dark? "Is it true?" she asked, her voice trembling. "Am I really?" Mr. Harrison nodded slowly, his eyes filled with regret. "Yes, Emma. You're the owner's daughter. And now, everything changes." The words hung in the air, thick with meaning. Emma felt a surge of anger, confusion, and betrayal. How could he have kept this from me? "I don't know what to do," she said, her voice barely audible. Mr. Harrison stood up, his expression hardening. "You don't have a choice. You're part of this now. Whether you like it or not, your life is about to take a turn you never expected." Emma stood up quickly, her head spinning. The weight of the revelation was almost too much to bear. She was no longer just an employee, she was part of something much bigger. The luxury retreat, the people who had once treated her as an outsider, suddenly felt like they were all connected in a way she couldn't yet understand. "I need to leave," Emma said, her voice shaking. "I need to figure this out. I can't." "Emma," Mr. Harrison said sharply, his tone softening as he stepped closer. "There's more. You have to know everything. You can't just walk away." Her mind was racing, but she knew he was right. She couldn't walk away now. She had to know the full truth. The hours that followed felt like a blur. Emma's mind refused to rest as the weight of Mr. Harrison's revelation hung over her. The retreat, once a place of dreams and ambition, now felt suffocating, like a gilded cage she had never realized she was locked in. She paced the small office, her thoughts racing. The owner's daughter? The words replayed over and over in her mind, as though saying them out loud would somehow make them true. But every time she uttered them, the reality felt more absurd. How could it be? She had never been told anything about her father's involvement with the retreat. It had all seemed so normal, her life, her work, her dreams. "Why didn't he tell me?" she whispered to herself, her voice trembling with confusion and anger. "Your father's a private man," Mr. Harrison replied, his voice calm yet heavy with understanding. "He wanted to protect you, keep you away from all of this. He didn't want the burden of his business to fall on your shoulders." Emma stopped pacing and turned to him. "Then why now? Why did he?" "He's gone, Emma," Mr. Harrison interrupted, his words sharp as they cut through the air. "He passed away last week. And everything changed." Her heart skipped a beat. "What?" she gasped, her voice barely a whisper. Mr. Harrison's face softened. "I'm sorry. He didn't want you to find out like this, but now that he's gone, the truth can no longer be hidden." Emma collapsed into the chair, her mind racing. Her father was dead? She felt a cold chill seep into her bones. All this time, she had been working at the retreat, believing that everything was moving forward just as it always had. But now, she realized, it had all been a lie. Her father's legacy, her legacy, was buried beneath layers of secrecy. For a moment, Emma simply stared at the floor, trying to absorb the magnitude of it all. She thought of her father, the man she had known all her life. He had always been distant, cold, and mysterious, but never once had she imagined something like this. She had always felt that there was something about him he was hiding, but she had never dared to ask. But now, it was all out in the open. "I need answers," Emma said, her voice steady but resolute. "If what you're saying is true, then I need to know everything. All of it." Mr. Harrison nodded. "I'll explain everything. But you have to understand, this is much bigger than you realize. There are people who've been in this for years, people who have their own interests at stake. And now that you're involved, it will get more complicated. You may not want to know everything, but you deserve the truth." Emma stared at him, her mind swirling with questions. What kind of world had her father been living in? Who were these people? Her heart pounded in her chest. There was no turning back now. She needed to understand what had been hidden from her, even if it meant confronting painful truths. "Please, tell me," she urged. Mr. Harrison stood and walked over to the window. The sun was setting, casting a golden glow over the retreat's sprawling grounds. He seemed to take a moment, as though choosing his words carefully. Finally, he spoke. "Your father's name wasn't just behind this retreat. He was the mastermind of an entire empire, one built on wealth, power, and influence. The retreat was just a small part of it. But more importantly, your father wasn't just any businessman. He was involved in something darker." Emma's breath caught in her throat. Darker? What could he mean by that? "What do you mean?" she asked, barely able to find her voice. "There were things he did that went far beyond running a successful business," Mr. Harrison said, his voice now strained. "He made enemies, dangerous ones. People who would do anything to protect their interests. And your father made sure no one ever found out about it. He was careful, meticulous. But it wasn't just about money. There was a level of secrecy, of manipulation." Emma's mind raced, struggling to process the flood of information. What kind of enemies are we talking about? And what did my father get involved in? Mr. Harrison hesitated, his face clouded with guilt. "I can't tell you everything, not yet. But I can tell you this, your father was not the man he pretended to be. And now that he's gone, everything he built is at risk of falling apart." A chill ran down Emma's spine. "What do you mean by falling apart? What's going to happen now?" "The retreat, everything your father worked for, is in jeopardy," Mr. Harrison said. "But more than that, you're at the center of it. Your name is tied to everything, whether you want it to be or not." Emma's mind was spinning. She felt as though the ground had shifted beneath her feet, and she was struggling to find her balance. Her father's death, his secrets, and the threat to the retreat, it was all too much to take in. "I don't know what to do with all of this," she admitted, her voice shaking. "How am I supposed to deal with this? How do I fix this mess?" "You don't have to do it alone," Mr. Harrison said softly. "There are people who can help you, people who owe your father their loyalty. They'll protect you, just as they protected him." Emma stared at him, trying to process his words. "Why are you helping me? What do you want from me?" "I don't want anything from you," Mr. Harrison said, his voice filled with sincerity. "I just want you to understand what's at stake. Your father was a part of a world you can't even begin to imagine. And now, whether you're ready or not, you're a part of it too. Emma felt a knot form in her stomach. A part of it? She had no idea what she was stepping into. But as much as she wanted to walk away from all of it, she couldn't. The truth was too important. I'll do whatever it takes to learn the truth, she said finally, her voice steady. But I need answers. I need to understand who my father really was and what I'm supposed to do next. Mr. Harrison nodded. I'll help you, Emma. But know this, there are people out there who won't want you to uncover the truth. And they'll stop at nothing to make sure you don't. Emma stood up, determination settling in her chest. She had no choice now. The mystery of her father's life, and the secrets he had kept from her, had become her responsibility. She had to uncover the truth, no matter what it took. As she left the office, she couldn't shake the feeling that her life had just been turned upside down. Everything she thought she knew was being ripped apart, and the pieces were scattered across a dark and dangerous landscape. But in that moment, she also felt something else, a flicker of hope. The mystery was hers to solve. And no matter how dangerous it became, she would uncover the truth. The next few days passed in a blur of confusion and suspicion. Emma couldn't shake the feeling that the world around her had changed. Every corner of the luxury retreat, every room she passed through, now felt foreign. Her father's presence seemed to hang in the air, a constant reminder of the man she thought she knew. Yet, every new piece of information she learned only pushed her further into a maze of questions. She spent hours in the office, sifting through her father's files, looking for something, anything, that would make sense of the chaos. His papers were neatly organized, each file meticulously labeled. But despite all the apparent order, it was as though they were deliberately designed to hide the truth. Nothing she found answered the burning questions in her mind. Instead, each document seemed to raise new, darker possibilities. It was late in the afternoon when she finally found something that stood out. Tucked away in the back of one of the filing cabinets was a folder with her name written on it. Her hands trembled as she pulled it out, her heart racing in anticipation. She opened it slowly, and inside was a series of letters. They were handwritten and dated back several years. The first letter was addressed to her, but she had no memory of ever receiving it. It was from her father. Emma. I know you've always wondered about the nature of my work. You've asked questions, and I've always given you vague answers. But the truth is, I've kept things from you for a reason. You're not ready to know everything yet. But one day, you'll understand. You've always had the strength to face whatever comes your way, even when you didn't realize it. Now, more than ever, you'll need that strength. The world you're about to enter isn't like anything you've ever known. Someday, you'll find the answers you seek. When you do, I hope you'll forgive me. With love. Father. Emma's breath caught in her throat. The letter seemed like a warning, a final message from her father before he disappeared into the shadows of his own secrets. She had always known her father was distant, but she had never imagined the depth of his secrecy. Why hadn't he told her any of this? Why had he left her in the dark for so long? She opened the next letter. It was dated just a few months ago. This time, it wasn't addressed to her. It was a letter from a man named Daniel Carter, someone she didn't recognize. Mr. Harrison. It's time for the next phase of the plan. Emma must be brought in. She's the only one who can carry this forward. I know she doesn't realize it yet, but she's the key to everything. Your loyalty to her father is unquestionable, but she needs to understand the stakes. If we're going to protect everything we've built, she must be brought into the fold. The time has come. Yours. Daniel Carter. Emma stared at the letter, her mind racing. Who was Daniel Carter? And why had her father kept such a close connection to this person? The letter suggested a plan, a grand scheme that her father had been involved in. But what was it? And what did it have to do with her? She felt a sudden chill in the room, as though a shadow had fallen over her. The walls of the retreat, once a symbol of luxury and success, now felt like a prison. A prison built on lies and deception. Emma wanted answers. She needed them. And she would stop at nothing to find them. That night, she couldn't sleep. The letter gnawed at her thoughts, consuming her mind. She needed to speak to Mr. Harrison. He had been the one to open the door to this world, and she needed his help to navigate it. The next morning, Emma went straight to his office. He was sitting behind his desk, reading through some papers, but when he saw her walk in, he put them aside and motioned for her to sit. "I found something," Emma said, her voice trembling with emotion. 2 letters. One from my father, and another from someone named Daniel Carter. Mr. Harrison's face tightened, and for the first time since they'd spoken, she saw a flicker of genuine fear in his eyes. "Emma, you're starting to uncover things that were never meant to see the light of day. Your father made sure of that." "Who is Daniel Carter?" she demanded. "What is all of this about? What is my father's plan? And why didn't you tell me any of this?" Mr. Harrison leaned forward, his eyes weary. "Your father was involved in something far beyond this retreat. He didn't just build a business, he built a network, one that spanned across countries, across industries. He was a part of something called the Syndicate. It's a group of powerful people who operate in the shadows, controlling everything from politics to global finance. Your father was their leader." Emma's stomach churned. "What are you saying? My father was involved in some kind of criminal organization?" Mr. Harrison shook his head. "Not exactly. The Syndicate is more like an invisible hand, influencing events and shaping the world in ways most people never see. Your father believed in their cause, believed that by controlling certain things, he could protect people, including you." "Protect me?" Emma scoffed, feeling anger bubble up inside her. "By lying to me? By keeping me in the dark about all of this? How could that possibly protect me?" Mr. Harrison sighed. "I know it's hard to understand, but your father believed that you were safer not knowing. He didn't want you to be a part of it, he wanted you to have a normal life. But now that he's gone, the truth is out. And you're right in the middle of it all." "Why me?" Emma asked. "Why does it have to be me? What do they want from me?" "They don't want anything from you," Mr. Harrison replied. "But you have something they need. You're your father's heir, whether you like it or not. And they'll stop at nothing to make sure you take your place." Emma stood up, pacing the room, trying to make sense of everything. "I don't want any part of this. I didn't ask for any of this. I just want answers." Mr. Harrison watched her, his face grim. "I know. But the longer you stay in the dark, the more dangerous it becomes. People are already watching you, Emma. And they'll do anything to make sure you follow through with what your father started." Emma's mind raced as the pieces of the puzzle began to fall into place. Her father had been a part of something far more dangerous than she could have ever imagined. And now, whether she wanted to or not, she was part of it too. "I need to meet this Daniel Carter," Emma said, her voice steely with determination. Mr. Harrison's eyes widened. "Emma, you don't know what you're asking. Meeting him is dangerous. He's not someone you want to cross." "I don't care," Emma replied, her voice firm. "I need to know the truth. And I'm not going to stop until I find it." Emma couldn't sleep that night. The weight of everything she had learned in the last few days pressed on her chest like a vice, making it hard to breathe. She had been pulled into a web of lies and deceit, a web spun by the very man she had loved and trusted the most, her father. Now, the reality was setting in. She wasn't just the daughter of a successful businessman. She wasn't just an innocent bystander in a world of luxury and privilege. She was a key player in something much darker, something she had no choice but to face head-on. The syndicate wasn't just some shadowy figure in the background, it was a force that had been shaping her life from the very beginning. And they weren't going to let her walk away. The thought of meeting Daniel Carter filled her with a mix of fear and determination. She had to know who this man was, what role he had played in her father's life, and what he wanted from her. Mr. Harrison had warned her against it, but she was beyond warnings. She couldn't turn back now. The following morning, Emma packed a small bag, her mind made up. She would leave the retreat. She needed to get closer to the answers she was seeking, and the only way to do that was to confront the very people who had been pulling the strings all along. It wasn't going to be easy, and it wasn't going to be safe. But she wasn't afraid anymore. Fear had been a constant companion since her father's death, but it had also become a motivator, a reminder that there was something worth fighting for. She made her way to the airport, where Mr. Harrison had arranged for a private jet to take her to a secluded location. He had tried to talk her out of it, but Emma was resolute. She had to do this. She had to face whatever came next. The jet was sleek and black, a symbol of wealth and power. It felt like the kind of thing her father would have owned, something designed to make a statement. Emma sat in the plush leather seat, her hands folded in her lap, her mind racing with questions. What would she find when she met Daniel Carter? Would he have answers? Or would he be another layer of deception she would have to peel away? The flight was uneventful, but it gave her plenty of time to think. As the jet soared through the sky, Emma couldn't help but wonder how much of her life had been shaped by forces she hadn't even known existed. Her father's influence had always loomed large over her, but now she realized that everything he had done, every choice he had made, had been part of a much bigger plan. A plan that involved her, even if she hadn't known it. By the time the jet touched down in a remote area of the country, the sun was beginning to set. Emma felt a strange sense of calm wash over her, as though the quiet, isolated location was somehow a sanctuary from the chaos she had left behind. She wasn't sure what was waiting for her, but she knew one thing for certain: this was where the truth lay. And she was ready to face it. A black SUV was waiting for her on the tarmac. The driver, a tall man in a suit, didn't speak as she climbed into the back seat. The drive was long and winding, taking her through dense forests and along narrow roads that seemed to lead nowhere. The isolation was almost suffocating, but Emma didn't mind. In fact, she welcomed it. This place felt like it held secrets, secrets that could finally give her the answers she needed. After what felt like hours, they arrived at a sprawling estate hidden deep in the woods. The mansion was imposing, its dark stone walls rising up against the twilight sky. It looked like something out of a Gothic novel, mysterious and foreboding. Emma's heart pounded in her chest as the driver led her inside. The interior was just as grand and intimidating as the exterior. Tall, arched windows lined the walls, and the grand staircase seemed to stretch on forever. But there was something cold about the place, something that made Emma's skin crawl. She couldn't shake the feeling that she was being watched, that someone was always a step ahead of her. She was escorted through a series of rooms, each more opulent than the last, until they reached a private study. The door was opened, and she was ushered inside. Daniel Carter was sitting behind a large desk, his back to her as he looked out the window. He didn't turn around when she entered, as if he was expecting her. Emma felt a chill run down her spine. There was something about him that was unsettling, something that made her feel like a mere pawn in a much larger game. He finally spoke, his voice smooth and confident. "Emma, I've been waiting for you." His words were calm, measured, but there was an edge to them that made Emma's heart skip a beat. She tried to steady her breath, but the weight of the moment was heavy. This was it, the confrontation she had been preparing for. There was no going back now. "You're Daniel Carter," Emma said, her voice steady despite the nervous energy coursing through her. "You're the one who's been pulling the strings all along." He turned to face her, his eyes cool and calculating. "You've been asking the right questions, I'll give you that. But you're not ready for the answers, Emma." I'm not here for more secrets, she replied, her voice firm. I'm here to find the truth. All of it. And I'm not leaving until I get it. Daniel leaned back in his chair, studying her with a mixture of curiosity and amusement. You think you're ready for the truth? The truth about your father's life? About the syndicate? You think you can just walk in here and demand answers? I don't care what you think, Emma said, her anger rising. I'm not afraid of you or your little network. I just want to know what my father was involved in, and what I'm supposed to do now that he's gone. Daniel's expression softened for a brief moment, as if he was contemplating something. Then, without warning, he stood up and walked around the desk. Your father was a brilliant man, Emma. He understood the power of the syndicate better than anyone. But he also understood that power comes with a price. A price you're going to have to pay. What do you mean? Emma asked, her voice trembling slightly. He reached into a drawer and pulled out a small, black box. It was unmarked, ordinary in appearance, but Emma felt a shiver run through her as he handed it to her. This is your inheritance, he said. The key to everything your father built. The key to understanding what comes next for you. Emma stared at the box, unsure of what to do. Was this really happening? Was this the moment everything would make sense? Open it, Daniel urged, his voice low and commanding. With trembling hands, Emma opened the box. Inside, she found a small, intricately carved key. It was old, worn, and covered in strange symbols she didn't recognize. Her heart raced as she realized what this meant. This wasn't just some token of inheritance. This was a key to something much bigger. What is this? She asked, her voice barely a whisper. Daniel smiled, a slow, knowing smile. This is the key to your father's legacy, Emma. The key to your future. But be careful, once you open the door, there's no going back. Emma had never felt so conflicted in her entire life. The key was small, barely fitting in her palm, but it felt heavy, laden with the weight of her father's secrets. For a brief moment, she considered walking away from it all, putting it back in the box, closing the lid, and walking out of Daniel Carter's mansion forever. But she couldn't. She had come too far to turn back. This was the moment she had been waiting for, the truth, the answers, the legacy she never knew she was part of. Daniel Carter watched her closely, his eyes sharp and calculating, as though he were studying her every move. She could feel the tension in the room, the silent battle for control. For the first time, Emma wondered if she had made the right choice. She had stepped into a world that was as dangerous as it was mysterious. But she didn't have a choice now. The box in her hands felt like a silent promise, one that could lead her to the truth, or pull her deeper into the darkness. Without saying another word, Emma slipped the key into her pocket. Where do I use it? She asked, her voice steady despite the growing sense of unease in her chest. Daniel's lips curled into a smile, but it wasn't comforting. There was something predatory about it, something that made Emma's skin crawl. You're not ready for what comes next, he said, his voice almost a whisper. But I suppose there's no turning back now. The room seemed to grow colder. As Daniel turned away, walking toward a set of bookshelves that lined the far wall. Emma didn't know what to expect, but she followed him, curiosity overcoming her fear. He reached for a book, a heavy, leather-bound volume, and pulled it from the shelf. There was a faint click, and the bookcase slid open to reveal a hidden doorway. Emma's breath caught in her throat. This was it, the moment she had been waiting for. The doorway was narrow, just wide enough for a single person to pass through, and it led down a dark, winding staircase. Emma hesitated. What was down there? What was behind that door? And why had her father kept it hidden for so long? Daniel turned to face her, his expression unreadable. This is where the real journey begins, Emma. If you're sure about this, I'll take you. But once you step inside, there's no going back." Emma swallowed hard, the weight of his words sinking in. She had already come too far to back out now. "I'm ready," she said, her voice barely more than a whisper. Daniel nodded, as though he had been expecting her answer. He stepped aside and gestured for her to go first. Without another word, Emma walked into the darkness. The sound of her footsteps echoed through the narrow hallway, the walls closing in around her as she descended further into the unknown. The air grew cooler as they reached the bottom of the staircase. Emma's heart pounded in her chest, each beat louder than the last. The hallway stretched out before her, dimly lit by flickering sconces mounted on the walls. The stone floors felt cold beneath her feet, and the smell of dampness and dust lingered in the air. At the end of the hallway, they arrived at a heavy wooden door, old and worn, but sturdy. Daniel stepped forward and pushed it open with ease, revealing a large room beyond. The room was dimly lit, with high ceilings and walls lined with shelves of old books, files, and maps. The room looked like an archive, one that had been kept hidden for a long time. "This is where it all started," Daniel said, his voice almost reverent. "This is your father's legacy." Emma stepped inside, her eyes scanning the room, trying to make sense of it all. There were old blueprints scattered across the desk, along with photographs, newspaper clippings, and journals. It was as though everything she had known about her father's life was here, in this room, hidden away from the world. "What is all this?" Emma asked, her voice thick with emotion. She had never seen her father in this light. He had always been a businessman to her, a man who worked hard, who built his empire from the ground up. But now she was beginning to understand that there was much more to him than she had ever known. Daniel walked over to a filing cabinet and opened one of the drawers. He pulled out a thick file and handed it to Emma. "Your father wasn't just a businessman, Emma. He was a part of something much bigger than that. He was involved in the syndicate. This is their world, and now, it's yours." Emma took the file from him, her hands shaking as she opened it. Inside, there were detailed accounts of business dealings, covert meetings, and high-level transactions. But what struck her the most were the photographs of her father standing next to people she didn't recognize. Powerful figures. Government officials. Other wealthy businesspeople. And then there were the photos of the man she had never expected to see, the man who had been by her father's side, guiding him through this hidden world, Daniel Carter. "This," Emma's voice faltered. "This can't be real. My father, he was involved in something illegal?" Daniel didn't answer right away. Instead, he gestured to the room around them. "The syndicate operates in the shadows. It's a network that controls almost everything: finance, politics, business. Your father knew that. He didn't just want to survive. He wanted to thrive. And the syndicate offered him the power he needed to do that." Emma's head was spinning. This was too much to process. Her father, her loving, doting father, had been involved in something so dark, so dangerous. How could she have been so blind to it all? "I don't understand," Emma said, her voice breaking. "Why didn't he tell me? Why did he keep this from me?" Daniel's eyes softened for a brief moment, as though he truly understood her pain. "Your father didn't want this life for you. He tried to protect you from it. But now that he's gone, you have no choice but to take his place. This is your inheritance, Emma. It's your legacy." "No," she whispered. "I don't want it. I don't want any part of this." "You don't have a choice," Daniel said softly. "The syndicate won't let you walk away. They've already set their sights on you." Emma's stomach twisted. She had been thrust into this world, whether she liked it or not. There was no turning back now. Her father's death had set everything into motion, and now it was her turn to pick up the pieces. Suddenly, a loud bang echoed through the room, followed by the sound of footsteps. Emma's heart raced as she looked toward the door. Someone was coming. Daniel's expression shifted to one of alertness. He motioned for Emma to hide. Without thinking, she ducked behind a large bookshelf, her breath coming in shallow gasps. She could hear the door creaking open, followed by the voices of several men. "They found you, haven't they?" Daniel murmured, his voice low and tense. "You're not safe here anymore." Emma's heart pounded in her chest. She had walked into a trap. The syndicate had come for her, just as Daniel had warned. And now there was nowhere to run. The tension in the room was thick as Emma crouched behind the bookshelf, trying to control her breathing. The footsteps grew louder, approaching the hidden room with deliberate slowness. Every muscle in her body tensed, her heart pounding in her chest. She knew she had only seconds to act. Daniel, who had been standing by the desk, didn't seem fazed. He didn't move an inch as the men entered the room. Instead, he stood there, his arms crossed, looking almost calm, as though he had anticipated this moment. Emma couldn't understand how he could remain so composed. Didn't he realize the danger they were in? Didn't he see that her life, her future, was at risk? The door creaked open fully, and 3 men stepped inside. They were tall, broad-shouldered, and wore dark suits that screamed authority. But it was their eyes, cold, calculating, that made Emma's skin crawl. These weren't just ordinary men. They were here on business, and the business they were in didn't leave room for mistakes. "Carter," one of the men said, his voice deep and commanding. "We need to talk." Daniel didn't flinch. "I'm sure you do, Phillips," he replied, his voice smooth but edged with something that could have been disdain. "But as you can see, I'm busy." Phillips, presumably the leader of the group, narrowed his eyes, his gaze flickering around the room. "I'm sure you're aware that the girl's a liability now. She's been compromised." Emma's stomach twisted. She didn't need to be told. She had known from the moment she stepped into this world that her father's legacy had more enemies than allies. But hearing the coldness in Phillips's voice made it all too real. She wasn't just a daughter anymore, she was a target. "I'm aware," Daniel said, his voice a little too calm. "But I'm not ready to let her go yet." "You think you can protect her?" Phillips scoffed. "The syndicate is bigger than you, Carter. Bigger than anyone. She doesn't have a choice in this matter anymore." Daniel's jaw clenched, but he didn't respond. The silence stretched between them, thick and suffocating. Emma wanted to scream, to run, to do anything but stay hidden in the shadows. But she knew that if she made a sound, it would be over. If she showed herself, it was likely she would never see the light of day again. Finally, Daniel spoke again. "I'm not going to hand her over to you. Not yet." Phillips let out a low laugh, shaking his head. "You're wasting your time, Carter. You think you're the only one who can play this game? You don't own this world. You don't control the syndicate." For the first time, Daniel's calm demeanor faltered. His eyes flashed with something Emma couldn't quite place: anger, frustration, maybe even fear. But he quickly regained control, his expression cold once more. "I own this world just as much as you do." "Phillips," Daniel said, his tone hardening. "And as long as I'm breathing, she's not going anywhere." The men exchanged uneasy glances, as if unsure of how to respond. Emma's heart raced. She didn't understand what was happening, but one thing was clear: Daniel wasn't just playing a game. He had a plan. And whatever it was, it involved her. The room fell into an uneasy silence, the only sound the soft hum of the flickering light above. Emma's mind was racing. What was happening? Why was Daniel so adamant about keeping her? And what did Phillips mean by, "the girl's a liability"? The seconds felt like hours, and just when Emma thought she might suffocate from the tension, Phillips took a step forward. "You can keep her for now, Carter," he said slowly. "But you need to understand this: she's not immune. The syndicate will come for her. They'll come for you too. I'm ready, Daniel replied without hesitation, his voice like steel. Philip studied him for a long moment, as though weighing his options. Then, without another word, he turned on his heel and motioned for his men to follow. The door slammed shut behind them, and the room seemed to exhale, the oppressive atmosphere lifting just a little. Emma stayed hidden for a few moments longer, waiting for the sound of retreating footsteps to fade away completely. When she was sure they were gone, she stepped out from behind the bookshelf, her knees weak from the adrenaline. "What now?" she asked, her voice trembling despite herself. Daniel turned to face her, his expression unreadable. "Now, we prepare." "Prepare for what?" Emma's voice was sharp with fear. "What's happening, Daniel? Why are they after me? What did you mean by the syndicate?" Daniel exhaled slowly, running a hand through his hair. He seemed to struggle for a moment before speaking. "I've been trying to keep you out of it, Emma. But the truth is, there's no escaping it now." Emma's mind was spinning. "No escaping what?" "The syndicate," he said softly. "It's a network of powerful individuals who control everything: finance, politics, business, the underworld. Your father was a part of it, and now, so are you." "I don't want any part of it," Emma said fiercely. "I just want to go home. I just want to be normal." "You can't," Daniel replied quietly. "They won't let you. The syndicate doesn't work that way. Once you're in, there's no way out." Emma felt the weight of his words settle on her chest like a stone. She was trapped in a world she didn't understand. Her father's legacy was no longer a source of pride, it was a chain, pulling her into something dark and dangerous. "But why me?" she asked, her voice almost a whisper. "Why now?" Daniel's eyes softened, and for the first time, Emma saw a flicker of something genuine in his gaze. "Because you're your father's daughter," he said, his voice low. "And you're the only one who can take his place." Emma's heart skipped a beat. "Take his place? What do you mean?" Daniel hesitated, then walked over to the desk. He picked up a letter that had been resting on it and handed it to her. The paper was old, the ink slightly faded, but the words were still legible. It was a letter from her father. "Emma. If you are reading this, it means that the time has come. You are the heir to my legacy, but you must understand that the life I've led is one of shadows and secrets. The syndicate will come for you, just as it came for me. You must decide whether to take control or let it destroy you. I am sorry I didn't prepare you for this. But I have always loved you, and I hope you can find your way in this world I've left behind. Dad." Emma felt her throat tighten as she finished reading. Her father's words echoed in her mind, but they only deepened the confusion. How had she not known any of this? How could he have kept this from her? "I don't know what to do," she whispered, her voice shaking. Daniel's expression was unreadable as he placed a hand on her shoulder. "You have to make a choice, Emma. The syndicate will come for you, either you fight for control or you become a pawn in their game." Emma stood there, frozen, her mind racing. The path ahead was unclear, but one thing was certain: her father's legacy had become her responsibility. And now, it was time to decide what kind of person she would be. Would she run? Or would she stand and fight? Emma chose to fight for her future. She turned the tables on the syndicate, using her father's power to her advantage. With the help of unexpected allies, she uncovered the truth about the world her father had left behind, finding a way to dismantle the organization from within. But in the end, the greatest lesson she learned was that her true legacy was not defined by the syndicate, but by the choices she made and the person she became.